Hello beautiful people, this video is about high functioning teams. It's one video in a series of 3 that I've done on high functioning teams, mostly because I'd love you to understand how to be able to build them, how to be able to find them, how to be able to work on them, how to be able to contribute to them, how to be able to enjoy them. I've had the absolute privilege of working on a few and building a few during my career, and it is absolutely fun and a privilege, and you get to do amazing things that you're subsequently proud of and that you keep talking about for the rest of your career. But I would love it for you. So let's dive in and talk a little bit about high functioning teams. There's a certain mystique around high-functioning teams, and we aspire to them and we talk about them. And Patrick Lencioni wrote a great book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, pointing to, low-functioning teams or non-functioning teams or destructive teams, I guess. And that's absolutely worth having a look at. But what I'd like to talk about in here is when we think about the mystique of high-functioning teams, lots of times what we do is we will mistake harmony for functionality. In our commitment to be nice to each other and to try and build a relationship with each other, to try and get along, lots of times what we will do is we will actually not have a lot of the conversations that need to be had. And we will shirk having difficult conversations, and we will not recognize the long-term corrosive impact of those sort of behaviors. So the difference between harmony and functionality and what it really takes to have a highly functional team does not mean that we always have what we would consider to be harmony, although over time we can get significantly better at having very harmonic conversations around issues and problems and breakdowns. And then the other thing that I want to explore with you is I want to look at the visible layer within an organization as to how work gets done, how we design that, how we think about that, how we use that to leverage teamwork. And then I want to look at the invisible layer, because without understanding the invisible layer, you're not going to understand the relationship between a high-functioning team and execution and see how those two really sink in together and how important they are. If you're currently working on a team you consider to be dysfunctional, and you've read Lencioni's book and you can see that your team follows some of the 5 dysfunctions of a team, then I would invite you to start thinking about whether or not the team itself and the individuals on the team, even though the team is exhibiting dysfunctional behaviors, whether or not the individuals on the team are all dysfunctional, or whether or not we actually have a misalignment, miscoordination issue that's showing up that we can actually resolve through a different perspective. So many times when people think about, dysfunctional teams, they will assume that the individuals on the team are also dysfunctional. And I find that incredibly destructive, because what it does is it mars our ability to be able to see each individual's commitment to contribute, commitment to add value, commitment to work well with each other. Nobody comes into work looking to, excuse my language, but piss everyone else off. So one of the most important things to remember when you start thinking about high-functioning teams is, yes, you need to look at the individuals, and yes, you need to look at the individual practices, and yes, you need to help people learn new practices. But if you assume that everything that looks like a people problem is an individual person problem, and that the people are dysfunctional in of themselves, then you're going down the wrong path. So your team isn't dysfunctional, it might be misaligned. The other thing that I want to look at is harmony doesn't equal high performance. And I think anyone who's been in any kind of long-term relationship, whether it's siblings or with your parents or with a partner, you recognize that you don't have harmony 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but you do have practices for dealing with issues when they arise. And the more powerful those practices are, the more time you spend in harmony. The same thing applies for high-functioning teams. I also want to look at what high-functioning teams know about execution that other teams don't. And there's a big difference in my mind in terms of what I've written about and how I think about it, is high-functioning teams have a deep understanding of how execution works, and other teams have that execution managed by someone else and imposed upon them. And there's a big difference in terms of the types of practices and the priority that high-functioning teams will put on those practices. So let's talk about what I refer to as the execution layer. So when you start putting the execution layer into action, and again, I've talked about it in a number of other videos, but just very quickly, what it is it's the difference between the visible layer that we're able to see. So think of a giant iceberg. The top of the layer is the visible layer. It's what we're able to see and what we all recognize today. And what that is the meetings, it's the project plans, it's the RASIC charts, it's the task lists, it's the task management system, it's the project management app that you're using. Those are all the visible things that you can see. The invisible layer has a layer of execution in it that we need to start paying attention to. And that invisible layer is the handshakes. It's the network of commitments across the organization. It's the agreements that people make with each other. It's the support and help and offers that people bring to each other. And there's a way to analyze that in a very structured way that actually gives us visibility into that execution layer. With visibility into that execution layer, we can now begin to help people be able to function differently, execute differently, and coordinate with each other differently, and co-create or co-invent together in a very different and much more powerful way. So the execution layer, when it's in action, has defined roles. Now, when I say defined roles, lots of people will think in terms of RASIC. I actually have found RASICs to be good for beginning a project, but many times what I found is the RASICs become obsolete as the project moves fast, particularly if we're working in an environment where we are innovating and we are doing something that's never been done before. And that happens many times within organizations, particularly at the moment where some of our projects will incorporate AI into what it is that we're doing, and we're dealing with different agents and we're engaging with people in a very different way with a very different focus. So one of the important things to consider is that the roles that really allow us to be able to deliver satisfaction need to be mirrored up and down and across and sideways inside an organization or inside a project team or inside a high-functioning team. And those roles are understanding the notion of internal customer and internal performer. Once we get a handle on that, what we're doing is we're opening up an understanding of responsibility and accountability that is very difficult to do otherwise. I have found with RASIC charts there might be 5 people who are involved in various different roles in one particular conversation or one particular decision or one particular piece of work. Too many cooks in the kitchen in those instances, and we're trying to produce safeguards for ourselves, not really delivering on our commitments. I prefer to go in with the idea that says that we are going to deliver on our commitments, and we will do it if the organization supports us in doing that. If we go back to Lancioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, I'd like to begin to sort of map those to the approach that I'm talking about here and that I think will help you think about this. So when Lancioni talks about the dysfunctions of a team, the number one is absence of trust. Trust is something that we know is hard to define, somewhat ephemeral, hard to build. You kind of have it or you don't, and that's sort of the way that we have been taught how to think about trust. But I would invite you to start thinking about trust in a very different way, which is that we start thinking about trust as something that we can build, as something that we can build and sustain over time if we understand this notion of commitments that we are making to each other, if we understand the role of customer and performer happening hundreds of times inside an organization or inside a team on any given day. Lancioni talks also about fear of conflict as being one of the 5 dysfunctions. It's really amazing when you see a super high functioning team that the people on the team have been practicing an understanding of breakdowns for long enough that when something goes wrong and they are in disagreement with somebody else, they are not afraid. In fact, they are to some extent welcoming that, because what it does is it creates an opening for real clarity and real satisfaction. And so if something has been bothering someone for a while and they've been kind of paying attention to it, and then another person comes in and said, look, we're having a breakdown, I need to talk to you about it, there's a sense of relief that somebody else is recognizing what they're also seeing, and there's an opportunity to be able to move forward quickly and produce clarity. Now that requires that both people on each side have a practice for being able to have those kind of conversations, but those practices can be built effectively and systematically over time. And again, I've talked about that in other videos where I talk about breakdown and conflict. Lancioni also talks about the avoidance of accountability. My belief is that intelligent, sane people do not make commitments in organizations where the execution layer is invisible, where there is no opportunity to negotiate, and where they can't say no. I don't know about you, but if I can't say no, I can't say yes. And if I'm working in an environment where if I say no, I get an onslaught of all the things that I've done wrong for the last decade, or all the things that I should have done or should have thought of or missed out doing, then I'm simply going to say yes in malicious compliance and move on. And I'm going to be looking for somewhere else to go pretty quickly. But if I'm in a position where I can say yes with real commitment and no, I can't do that right now, or I can't ever do that, or I want to negotiate that, or I need to counteroffer something to you that I think would be better for what it is that you're asking me to do. If I can't have those conversations, then I'm not going to be the person who holds that level of accountability that I personally would like to hold and that I believe most human beings like to hold. The other thing that Lancioni talks about, which is inattention to results. What that shows up for me is that sometimes we rely on the narrative of the project to align us around our focus on results. But the reality is that gets decontextualized and fragmented throughout the entire organization and throughout the duration of the project. One of the most valuable things that I've seen people do is to really carry an understanding of what satisfaction means, both at the macro level of the project and at the micro level of the individual contribution. Those get defined on a constant basis, and they get reevaluated and recalibrated as needed as the project moves forward, but they get done in a dynamic conversation, not where we're dealing with the aftermath of someone having done something wrong, but where we are having the constant calibration conversations that allow us to be able to move something forward effectively as we learn more about what the delivery is going to look like. So if this conversation around high functioning teams has piqued your interest and is useful for you, I'd love to be able to offer you a free white paper. It's on my website, it's downloadable, and it talks about execution by design. It covers a number of these topics. It's under www.jenniferkenny.com/execution. There's also a link to it in the comments below. Have a look at it, let me know what you think, and then I'd love to continue the dialogue with you as you start looking at either moving to a high functioning team, leaving a dysfunctional team behind, building your own high functioning team, or seeing yourself as someone who has something enormous to contribute to a high functioning team. I would love it for you because it's an incredible experience, and I'd love to be able to help you get there. As you pursue this, let me know how it goes for you, and I wish you the best of luck.